Pavia as a point, but of course, Bielema is going to defend his conference, and he's going to do what he's going to do because he feels that's his duty, and he feels he's going to speak up. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 50 of Bando's Breakdowns. My name is Zain Bando. Thank you so much for joining me. Huge milestone episode this week, although in my brain it doesn't feel as big because I have so many other things going on both here and outside of here that when episode 50 snuck up on me, it did exactly that. It snuck up on me. But thanks again for joining me this week. It's Friday. It's a beautiful day in Chicago at the time that this is being released, at the time that this is being recorded. Not so much. There's thunderstorm warnings in my area, so try to make sure this goes as seamless as possible from a recording standpoint. But for now, excited to get back at it, excited to talk about a couple of different things today because we have some fun topics on the horizon. Again, going to keep this short and sweet, 30 minutes as per usual. Going to have some audio sound bites as well. Stay tuned for those and so much more. Before we get to our orders of business here, just wanted to get you to a few quick reminders. As always, listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. It would be greatly appreciated. On the audio-only side, if you subbed over to those. On the YouTube side, you can do so at youtube.com/ETB Network for all of the video feeds of the show and every other show across the network as well. So again, it would be very much appreciated if you guys did so on both fronts. So with that being said, just as a quick reminder, if you've never seen this show before, my name is Zain Bando. I'm a sports journalist and an ETB Network co-host. If you're new to the program, welcome. Thanks for checking me out and seeing kind of my style and how I do things and kind of the different things that I discuss. If you've known me and you followed me since day one, either on this show, on the MMA Outsiders, on Forever Power 5, and speaking of the MMA Outsiders, we're going to have an announcement about that later in the show. I've been getting a few questions as to what's going on with it, what the future of it's going to look like. So I'm gonna reveal some good news later on in the show regarding that. So I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah, you can catch my work a bunch of different places. MMA Knockout on Sports Illustrated, the Sporting News. You can look at my stuff over at Field Level Media, and I'm syndicated several places as well, based off some of my other work for those said outlets that I do content for, revolving around college sports and combat sports as well, which is what a good bulk of today's episode is going to be revolving around, mixed in with some WNBA and NHL. But enough of me bantering. Let's get to the show now. We're excited to get to this show. It should be fun. So let's get to it here. So Zan's overview, what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup. We'll talk about some recent comments that Bret Bielema made in response to Diego Pavia's comments that were very anti-Big Ten, called out several schools, did not mention Illinois by name, but Bielema was asked about it at a media availability during Illini night at Wrigley Field, which I'll get to what that was in a little bit. We'll talk about who was at Illini night. We'll talk about some of the festivities. We'll also talk about a notion of a potential Big Ten SEC challenge, but particularly in football. That would be very interesting if that would ever come to fruition. We'll talk about UFC Atlanta. We'll recap that. We'll go over UFC Baku, what to expect this weekend from those fights. We'll talk about an interesting difference in the Baku card than other cards as it relates to some of the content you'll see from me. So that'll be very, very cool, and some scheduling altering. So we'll talk about that. Along that, we'll talk about Caitlin Clark and the latest incident in the Fever's most recent game the other night, and we'll talk about just everything revolving around that. And we'll probably fit in a few more things, but let's not waste any more time. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup once again. They beat the Edmonton Oilers the other night to win it all. Not a surprise. They're a great team. They did what they needed to do, And I got to be happy for them, man. I mean, they were the best team all year. Edmonton gave them a fair fight, it seemed like, but Florida's talent just seemed way too overpowering, just like it was last year as well. So again, very, very nice performance by them. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because I didn't watch them actually win the cup. So that's pardon my arrogance, but there are just some things on this show that sometimes I can go deeper into than others. But Florida winning the Stanley Cup, obviously a major deal going back to back, huge deal. Should obviously get that market fired up to try to win it, to try to go for a three-peat next year. So that should be very exciting, and kind of looking forward to seeing where the future of hockey goes, because it's one of those sports to me where if you don't have, some of the major teams in there, it's hard to get behind it. That's just my personal take on it. I know a lot of other people would disagree with me, but I just think hockey is one of those sports where you either have to love it and you have to love it so much that like that's the only sport you follow or one of the few sports you follow. Just like how fighting, it's kind of in its own little bubble, if you will. People either know about it or they don't know about it. So that's one of those things that I think could be improved upon from a popularity standpoint, is getting people excited about hockey in different ways. But the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup, obviously a major deal, and doing it 2 years in a row, of course, is very exciting and a great feat, and good for them. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do from here in the offseason and beyond. So it'll be cool. All right, let's move on now. Illini night at Wrigley Field. This took place on Tuesday. This is airing on Friday. So Tuesday night was the annual Illini night. They've done this now for, well, I've been going since 2019. I don't know how many years in a row they've done it now. Obviously, they skipped COVID, but yeah, this year was a unique event just because of the star power that was there. So we had Bret Bielema, who's obviously the Illinois head football coach. We had Shauna Green, who's the women's basketball coach, and we had Brad Underwood, who's the men's basketball coach, in attendance, alongside a few Illinois football players. Those included, I'm pretty sure it was Luke Altmaier, it was Josh Krutz, it was Gabe Akis, and trying to think if there was any others. Let me just double check and make sure that I had this correct. Let me see. Because I have it right here. Yeah, it was, let's see, Luke Altmaier, Josh Getsky, Gabe Akis, and Josh Krutz were in attendance at Illini night on Tuesday. Were the football players. So a very, very cool event. This is something that Illinois has done now for several years, to get the alumni out to Cubs games, to get current students out, just to get people kind of in that mindset like, hey, the fall is coming up. You should be excited. And this year, there's a lot to be excited about. So, to give you a little run through, obviously, Bielema's team, off of a 10-win year, won the Citrus Bowl. I was in attendance, talked about all that. If you go back in the archives, you'll find it. Brad Underwood made another NCAA tournament appearance, as he usually does. Without COVID, it's now 6 NCAA tournament appearances. And Shauna Green has done a masterful job at turning around what was once a fledgling women's basketball program just 4 years ago into a legitimate contender. They finally won their first NCAA tournament game in a long time this spring, that just recently passed, and they have a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, a pretty good transfer class. They have a really highly rated recruit coming in as well. So they should be destined for big things. But I think a lot of the focus was on this Illinois football team. So before I get to the next part, I just want to say, because it's very important I give this context, Illinois went on a bit of a Chicagoland media tour on Tuesday, spoke to, I think it was Fox 32 Chicago, did some stuff at Barstool. Bret Bielema had a spot on 670 The Score. That was early in the morning. So they did a bunch of stuff. Then they also did a media availability with Select Media, which I was not in attendance for this. I could have been, but it was too early in the afternoon to do so. But the clips are surfaced across social media and the full availability is on YouTube. So I figured I would talk a little bit about it, and we also have some sound bites from this availability that we can get into a little bit. So recently, Diego Pavia went on Bussin' with the Boys. Obviously, Bussin' with the Boys, they're now doing their own thing. They're no longer at Barstool anymore, but they're still getting on major guests. Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt quarterback, super controversial, very flamboyant, charismatic, whatever you want to call it. He was on a recent edition of that podcast and said some very anti Big Ten things. He was offered by several schools um, to go other places. There were some Big Ten offers in the mix too, none of which were disclosed by him. But he basically said the conference you want to play in is the SEC, and that you're not going to get the best competition out of the Big Ten, which I guess ruffled some feathers. It's now gained traction on various sports websites. People are writing about it. I even wrote about it for my own stuff. But Bret Bielema has had a chance to clap back in a video from Adam Rittenberg, which I have the audio from. He responded to Pavia's comments, and let's just say this: they were fun. He knew what he was doing, and in full Bret Bielema fashion, if you will, he really delivered the goods and tried to put Pavia in his place, and it was definitely very interesting. So let's go through this. We're gonna hear it, and then I'll give my reaction, and then we're gonna move on to a bunch of other stuff. But I figured I would throw this in here. There's gonna be some more Bielema content later this week when I do Blitz and whatnot. So that should be very fun. So stay tuned for that. And for now, here is the clip of Bret Bielema responding to Diego Pavia. So let's listen to it.
I understand what he's saying, right? And he's regurgitating what's being said to him, I think, probably. Listen, the Big Ten, I grew up in this league, played in this league, was very successful at Wisconsin, but you know, my first bowl game, we beat an SEC team that I actually ended up working for later, right? I think on any given Saturday, anybody can get anybody, and that was what played out in the bowl game, right? And I know it was brought to my attention, right? There's no SEC returning team with 10 wins, if I'm not mistaken, and we got 3 in the league, right? So like, it's just kind of one of those moments where I think in the last 3 years of the evolution of college football with the portal, the NIL, it's created a level playing field that's never been seen before, and I think it's trending more that way than going back to the way. A lot of people want to live in the past. They try to stay by the rules of the past, and I just don't see it a part of our future.
So that was Bret Bielema. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. You just had an Arkansas reference in there that was funny because you said, the first bowl game that he won, it was against, an SEC team that he ended up being a part of later. And we we know what SEC team that's about. So anyway, good answer, I would say. And he did make the smart move by defending his conference and by validating the claim that, yeah, 3 10-win teams return in the Big Ten from this past year. Obviously, one of them being Ohio State, of course, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, the other 2 he was referencing were, I think it would have been Illinois with 10 or more wins, and the other one probably would have been Oregon, I would think. And then there's probably more because I was thinking Penn State too. But in any event, though, point being, good answer. Obviously, he's going to defend his conference. He's been in the conference a long time. Obviously, played at Iowa, of course, coached at Wisconsin. Obviously, had that stint in Arkansas where he didn't do so great. Then went over to the NFL and was, a position coach for the Giants and the Patriots, and now he's back in the NFL leading Illinois. So, I think it's a good answer. I think Pavia, I would agree with Bret to some extent that, he was probably told by someone to say some of the things he said. But I do think though that these guys in these major conferences are going to defend their conference. I mean, what else is Diego Pavia going to say? And I think something else that he made reference to, which I thought was great, is he picked the low-hanging fruits. I mean, let's be honest here. Nebraska, they're on an upward trend, right? But do people really consider Nebraska right now a scary opponent? No, but if they can win 10 games this upcoming season, sure. And Purdue isn't even a part of the conversation. I mean, Purdue hasn't been in the thick of the Big Ten since Jeff Brom was the coach, and that was 3.5 to 4 years ago already, which is crazy to think about. So, I think to an extent Pavia is a point, but of course Bielema is going to defend his conference and he's going to do what he's going to do because he feels that's his duty and he feels he's going to speak up as one of the older coaches in the league, as a coach that's been around a long time and has been in that league for on and off almost 20 years as a coach. So, he's gonna do that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's see if Pavia can back up his words. Let's see if his Vanderbilt team can actually win some games in the SEC and contend for a bowl again and do that sort of thing. It's going to be interesting. But of course, that ruffled some feathers, and in typical Bielema fashion, he pulled it out of the hat. So I got to give it to him, and I thought it was very well played by the Illinois coach. So overall, fun stuff. Approaching the 70-ish day mark until college football, and as you guys know, Friday, August 29th, Illinois opens with Western Illinois at home at Memorial Stadium. So should be fun in college football, and the video game itself is right around the corner. So should be a fun rest of the summer, and let's see what else happens moving forward with all of that. So figured I would pop that up, and now we're gonna quickly move on over to another topic, which I've been beating like a drum ad nauseum. And before we do, though, we are just going to take a quick timeout from our friends over at Playback, and we're going to be right back in just a few. So stay tuned. Just wanted to give a quick timeout in the middle of the show to remind you guys that Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. I teased it a little bit earlier that there was an announcement coming, and sure enough, without further ado, here we go. Presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETV Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And with that, we can get back to the show. All right, thanks again for checking out that message. And again, Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. They've been awesome to us, and there's going to be a lot of fun stuff on the horizon. It's free. You can watch live sports with all of us on the same screen. No subscription required or anything like that. Stay locked into the games, all that stuff. And the reason why I'm plugging Playback again in this way is, I guess, stay tuned for another Playback teaser that's less generic and a little bit more fun. But until then, let's get back to the show now. So in doing so, let's move over here. Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall. We have a deadline, ladies and gentlemen. We actually have a definitive answer as to when we might know if or if not this fight is going to happen. And that is courtesy of a new interview that's now surfaced on Jim Rome. So let's check it out. This was a fun interview. From what it seemed like, various clips are floating around. And this is the latest from the boss man himself as to what is going on with the fight. So let's check it out.
Jon Jones has never turned down an opponent here or been afraid to fight anybody.
So if, for instance, he doesn't fight this guy, who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But yeah, if we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
I was going to say, Dan, my last thought on that. How long are you going to wait? I mean, how long is it worth waiting for?
I said a couple weeks.
Couple weeks?
We'll have answers in the next couple weeks. Jon Jones has never turned down an opponent here or been afraid to fight anybody.
So if, for instance, he doesn't fight this guy, who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But
Yes, that was a soundbite, a newer soundbite, and the reason why I played it again is because I think these words might come back to bite the boss man there. So let's pop this back up. So now we know what is sort of going on, but at the same time, we still sort of don't. But we have a deadline. It's a couple weeks. So 2 to 3 weeks is the target as to whether or not we will know if Jones Aspinall is going to happen or not. And I'm going to stick with the same notion that I think it is going to happen still. I think this fight needs to happen. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, it's the biggest fight at heavyweight you can do. I mean, again, looking at the top five, the top two, there's nobody else for Aspinall to fight, or excuse me, there's nobody else that would make sense for Aspinall to fight who he doesn't beat. So it's either this fight or Aspinall more than likely will get promoted to undisputed or will fight Cyril Gane for the undisputed heavyweight title. So we shall see what occurs. But that's that. Didn't want to spend too much time on it just because we've really exhausted it as much as we could over the last month, and there's nothing more to rehash than what we already know. But at least what we do know is we know a timetable. We know when it could happen. We know when it might not happen. So that'll be very exciting. All right, let's talk about UFC Atlanta. A horrible card. Let's be straight. There's 6 consecutive decisions, but it ends with Kamaru Usman dominating Joaquin Buckley. Good fight. Won 4 out of the 5 rounds. Used a lot of wrestling in this one. I completely underestimated Usman. That's my bad. Really bad mistake on my part. And again, I haven't won a main event unless you count the Ludovit Klein fight from a couple weeks ago at the Apex, which ended up becoming the main event. That was the Gamrot Klein fight, rather. I haven't won a main event since Kansas City, and my losing streak continues. I had Buckley in this one. I thought youth was going to be a huge factor, and I was wrong on that. Usman did what he needed to do. He took away the striking, used his wrestling really well, used his grounded pound, and just frustrated Buckley. Buckley didn't know how to get up, and it was referenced several times during the broadcast, I think particularly by Dominic Cruz, if I'm not mistaken, that he believes that Buckley did not train with enough guys where he could get off their back. Whether that's true, whether that's not true, clearly a gaping hole, but Buckley is still super young in this game, at least for the welterweight division. Had a 6-fight win streak snapped, but I think will do a lot of good things in the future. Kamaru Usman, huge win, first win in a very long time. I think he has a lot of upside. Needs to see how the rest of the division plays out with this JDM Islam fight, but after this fight happens, you never know. And Usman's going for a title shot, so you never know what might happen with that. I went 7-5-1. There was that no contest in the Paul Craig Bellato fight, which we're not going to get into. That was hugely overblown, and I just think it's a very unfortunate situation. And who knows? Maybe this fight gets rebooked again, and maybe this is the new cursed UFC fight that everybody can complain about now. I don't know. But overall, though, not a bad card. I think we're at now 138 wins for the year, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see how we do on UFC Baku this upcoming Saturday, or Baku. So UFC Baku, main event of the evening. We got an early start time this week because of the location. So let's get into it again. We'll have predictions early Saturday morning. Which that'll be that won't be a problem. Obviously, we'll have predictions early Saturday morning for that. Okay, so we got a noon Eastern start. Prelims are on ESPN. Main cards on ABC, which means the whole card is free. 12 fights from Azerbaijan. It's an okay card at Baku Crystal Hall. Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree in the main event. Let's take a look at the fight from a particulars standpoint, like I like to do. Hill has won 3 out of his last 5. Roundtree's won 4 out of his last 5. His lone loss of course, coming to Alex Pereira last October at UFC 307. That was for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. I like Roundtree because of the activity, because I think his boxing is a little bit better. I think he did well across 5 rounds against Pereira, and I just think he's been so inconsistent, man. Like just his health, like he just, I don't know, I just think he hasn't fought consistently in a long time. That injury really threw him off in 23. Like, I don't know. I don't think he's been the same fighter ever since he won that Teixeira fight. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I would like to see him win, but I think this is clear Roundtree's fight to lose. And Tapology agrees. Tapology overwhelmingly likes Roundtree. I like him by KO in the second or third round. So let's see how that fight goes. What are some other ones on the card? Fazeev is on this card. The Curtis Blades fight against Kuniev was rebooked. Let's see. Orabai's on this card. It was on Contender. Naimov is on this card against Botan Grad. Yeah, it's all right. It's a good hardcore card, but the main event is awesome. So as long as the main event delivers, we should be great. So that's going to do it for a Baku preview. Hopefully we do better on this card. Again, 7-5-1 this past week. Should be riding around, I think it's 138 wins. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure that that's correct. I think it's 138 wins now. Let me just make sure. I'm almost positive that that's right. Although tracking this thing is pretty interesting, just because there's so many cards. So let's take a look at this here. Right? All right, let's take a look. Yeah, 138, 101, and 2 so far through 20 shows. So we'll see how Baku goes this week. And speaking of, we're gonna do a UFC Playback watch along for this card Saturday, June 21st. The link will be the link is coming soon. And you can jump in with me. We can watch the fights on the same screen. Should be there the entire card. Shouldn't have any issues. So it should be a fun afternoon, if you will. And again, noon Eastern, which means that's 11 a.m. Central and 9 a.m. Pacific over in Cali, Vegas, etc., etc. So stay tuned for that. Should be fun to actually watch some UFC with a bunch of you guys on stream for the first time. Never been able to do my mini version of a fight companion, but it should be a blast. So looking forward to it. All right, really quick here, just wrapping some stuff up. One thing that I saw, the Caitlin Clark incident with the major fight that took place, it's disappointing, man. People got to respect the game. It's as simple as that. Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in the sport. I'm not saying the refs need to protect her, but man, last I checked, this isn't a fight. This is a basketball game. We need to keep it to basketball. I understand tempers flare, but this isn't good luck for anybody. It really isn't. You know, as I said a few weeks ago, the WNBA should be focused on building stars and building talent and getting people to really enjoy their games and not all this other stuff, not all this other social media crap. I think it makes the league look bad. I really do. And there are sports for that, as I mentioned earlier in this show. But the WNBA isn't one of those. And I think if it was the NBA, I'd be saying the same thing. So there's that. I mean, I don't have much other to say other than, you know, I feel bad and I feel like she's been targeted unfairly. I really do. And I think it's unfortunate. And I think she needs to be even a bigger advocate moving forward. Just when it comes to this stuff, because it doesn't make the league look good and it doesn't make people care about it as much as they probably should. So there's that. All right, Zain Zinger. I think the Big Ten SEC Challenge is a great idea. And the reason why I say it is simple. Early in the season, Big Ten versus the SEC, college football previews galore based on who's playing. Who wouldn't want to see this? Ohio State's already playing Texas. to start the year. There's no reason why people wouldn't get fired up for Illinois, South Carolina, Alabama versus Michigan. Let's think of some other examples here of what other matchups. Oh, Penn State, Ole Miss could be another good one. Oregon versus Georgia. Like there are so many different games that I think people would care about, and I think they need to make it happen. I think college football fans would be ecstatic to see these playoff previews early in the season to see how good these teams really are. And if these are the two conference heavyweights, et cetera, I think they need to figure it out. And I think they need to play an even number of games. I agree with Bielema on that front. I think the same number of conference games makes sense. And we got to get rid of some of these bye games too, man. No one wants to watch Alabama versus Eastern Illinois in November. Let's be honest here. So there's that. All right. No errors this week. Really fun show, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Had a whole lot of fun doing this as usual. And we're going to be back with episode 51 next week as we're going to dive deep into UFC 317. We'll recap Baku. There's probably going to be some other breaking news across all the other sports that I'm not thinking about. And speaking of, we don't have a banner for it, but the MMA Outsiders is going to return for the first time since March. It's going to be me and Anthony Ballister. We're going to be delivering the goods here moving forward with episode 119, which is crazy to think about. We've had this episode delayed for quite some time now. It should be a fun show. And we're gonna be back to a regular routine with this show. We're gonna be airing it Wednesday nights. So my show will be Fridays, Outsiders will be Wednesdays. So stay tuned. It's gonna be an every week show. Fight nights, pay-per-views, you name it. We'll be back with that show moving forward. It should be fun. We might try some different things as well, just to see what works and what doesn't. But looking forward to all that and what comes with the relaunch of TMMAO, if you will. So thanks again for tuning in. My name is Zain Bando. And again, before we get out of here, just wanted to quickly remind you guys one last time, please be sure to listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/GGB Network as the climb to 1,000 continues. But until next week, I hope you have a great weekend. Hope you enjoy UFC. If you're watching that, I hope you're enjoying MLB and all the other stuff that comes with it. And maybe or maybe not the NBA Finals will be over. But if they end up being over by the time you listen to this, it was a very, very anticlimactic NBA season with the potential that my second favorite team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, will be putting on their rings sooner rather than later. But hey, if Indiana comes back to win the series, we'll have a lot more to talk about as well. But until then, have a good one, and I'll see you guys soon.